A whole lot of socialism questions. So we're going to jump into our Stopping Socialism segment here. This is now, is this the second poll that we've done on a bunch of socialism things this year, or is this the third? I can't remember. I know we've done at least one other back in like May, but I can't remember if there's one at the beginning of the year or...
On socialism?
Yeah.
I think this is the third.
Okay. Yeah. So we've been doing a lot of socialism things. One of the predictions right after the election of Donald Trump that Justin made, probably on this show and other places, especially to me, was this idea that we're going to see a roaring comeback of socialism, and that the only way that the Democrats were going to be able to kind of take back some of those independent voters was to appeal to that populist mindset. Or rhetoric that helped get Donald Trump elected. So they were going to, what's a left version of populism? Well, democratic socialism, that's what it's called. So we've been focusing a lot more time and effort on socialism over the past several months than we probably have in the previous couple of years combined. So we've been doing a lot of these socialism questions and these when we collaborate with Rasmussen. And the results are shocking. So again, just to reiterate, these are poll results of likely voters between the ages of 18 and 39. So this is the younger generations, and we wanted to pick their brains when it comes to socialism and the appeal of socialism, and basically trying to gauge where this is going to fall in the political landscape in the next coming election cycles. So Justin, you want to tee it off with the first question here, or how do you want to approach this topic?
Yeah. So the first one, which really serves as kind of a foundation that helps us understand a lot of other questions. This, and we also asked another it's almost like a demographic question about who people voted for in the previous election. This helps us with the crosstabs to help us get a sense of how different groups are thinking, and whether answers to some questions might be correlated to answers to other questions. That all makes sense as we go through this. But one of the foundational questions is presidential election 2028. Would you like to see a Democratic Socialist candidate win the 2028 presidential election? Keep in mind, this is only 18 to 39-year-olds, and it's likely voters, so not registered voters, and not just people who are American citizens or just anyone who picks up the phone or whatever. These are only people who say they're likely to vote in the next election. And the numbers, as you can see, 51% yes, 32% no, 17% need to re-examine their lives. And 51% is interesting because we asked this exact same question a couple months ago, and we got effectively the same result. I think it was in September. The result was 53%, I think. So basically the same. That's within the margin of error. So it confirms what we had found before. Young voters want a socialist. Notice we didn't ask, would you be open to voting for a socialist? It's would you like it, it's not would you want them to be the Democratic Party's candidate. It's do you want them to be president?
Right.
Would you like it if they were president? That's the question. And 51% say yes, only 32% say no. So you're going to see throughout this poll, and other polls we've done showed the same thing. Socialism is popular. And some people might be inclined to think, and we'll see this when we get to the Mamdani questions, that socialism is only popular because people like the socialist candidates. But as you'll see in these questions, and this is confirmed by other polls we've done, actually younger people like the socialist policies more than they like the actual candidates themselves. So we found support for socialist policies that we talk about later were even higher than the people who said that they wanted a socialist to be president. So this is very, very bad. It's very bad, very disturbing. And, we can move on from there.
Right. Yeah. No, very, very interesting. I mean, if the whole election came down to just these people that answered our poll, like the Republicans would need all of the no votes and all of the not sure votes, and still
or they would need to be a socialist.
yes, and still need to grab some people from the yes column. Like that's right. How stacked it is for these people that were polled. All right, how about this, Justin? When thinking about the list below, do you want to go in this question, or should we skip this one? What do you want to do?
No. Let's just keep going. We'll go in order.
Okay. So when thinking about the list below, which has influenced you the most to support democratic socialism?
Now, this was only asked to the people who said that they wanted to vote for a socialist for president.
Okay, great.
Doesn't say that in the question there.
Yeah, so parents, grandparents, church leader, teacher in college or high school, books, online videos or podcasts, television shows, radio shows, print or digital news publications, or not sure. And of all of those options, by far the most likely to influence you to support democratic socialism, according to this survey, is parents at 27%. Over a quarter of the respondents said that, which is a pretty big plurality or whatever, considering how many options there were. No other. I mean, the next closest was 17% online videos and podcasts. So yeah, having something at 27%, that's pretty notable there, Justin.
Yeah, and this was surprising. There's some other surprising things because we ask more kind of along these lines as the questions go on. But if you add parents and grandparents together, and I think they kind of should be added together, 34% say, that's 1 in 3 of the people who want a socialist to be president, say that their parents or their grandparents are the biggest influence. And then if you add books, online videos, and like, say, print and digital news publications kind of together. So basically like online, information plus, books, kind of higher level discussions of socialism and stuff, podcasts, that's the kind of thing you're thinking about, right? You get, what is that? About 33%. So if you combine that number with the parents and grandparents number, you're basically at 2/3. So 2/3 of the people in the survey who wanted a socialist, either it was a parent or grandparent that led them down that road, or it was them reading and watching material online. Mm-hmm. So those were basically the two, or our hardcover book. Like those were the two major sources, if you're going to summarize it. And what really surprises people who see these results is that teacher in college or high school was 4%.
Right.
Almost no one said that it was their education that led them down this road, even though most conservatives, and I would say even most socialist liberals, would say that's where most most of the action is. It's in college, and
right? The indoctrination factories, right?
Exactly, but that's not what they said. And so let's go down to the next couple of questions, because the questions after this are very similar.
Yeah. Also, confirmation that radio is owned by conservative voices and influence. That's been the case for a while, but it shows up in our poll there.
It is very, very interesting that that's the case. Yes. Okay. So then we asked. So you might say, well, why would you keep asking questions about this? Well, because we asked some more questions trying to dig into this, because what I wanted to get at was I wanted to see, okay, we ask you directly, socialist, why are you a socialist? But that doesn't necessarily mean that that's the real reason you're a socialist. It just is the reason you think that you're a socialist. But can we find some sort of almost like hidden correlation in the data between people who say other sorts of things, and maybe they don't attribute that thing to being the reason, but in reality, there's a connection there, right? So we asked, is there do your parents, basically, were your parents or your parents or guardians growing up, how did they feel about socialism? And what you see here is a very high percentage of people said that, in their opinion, because this is, of course, of an opinion, right? We're not asking the actual parents or grandparents or guardians themselves. It was, well over 50%. It was like 54% or something, right? So 50, I mean, we're talking about over half correlates pretty nicely with the percentage overall of people, 51%, that said they want a socialist to be president, right? Now, what's interesting about this is if you scroll to the right, go all the way to the very end, I think. We're looking for political, who you voted for. Not approval. Yep, right there. Okay. So we also asked who people voted for. That was a separate question that we're not going to go over here. But we asked who people voted for in the election. So what these numbers are showing on your screen here, if you're watching the video version of the show, is you'll see these percentages are the percentage of people who responded about their parents and their interest in socialism, their favorability of socialism, based on who they voted for. So the Harris column is the people who said they voted for Harris. And then here's how those people responded about their parents. Okay. 35% said that their parents really loved socialism, or whatever the response was. 31% said they had a somewhat favorable view of socialism. 12% said somewhat unfavorable. 10% very unfavorable, right? So what you see here is this. If you were a Harris voter, of the Harris voters, add those two numbers, what is that? 66%. 2/3 of the Harris voters, the people who said that they voted for Kamala Harris, 2/3 of them said that their parents had a favorable view of socialism. Now, look at the Trump unfavorable numbers. Okay. That's 47%. So of the people who voted for Trump, 47% of those people said that their parents had a very unfavorable view of socialism. Right? So what I'm trying to illustrate here is that if your parents like socialism, and that's your perception, you are much more likely to vote for Trump. Much more likely to vote for Harris. If your parents don't like socialism, you're much more likely to vote for Trump. That's relative to other factors that we're looking at, okay? Mm-hmm. So there's a clear connection between the two. Now, you might say, well, that's not surprising. People often adopt the views of their parents or whatever. Okay, sure. But as we go into the next set of questions, you're going to see why this is relevant. So let's go back over, and then we'll go down to the next question. So this is the same kind of question, except now we're asking about teachers in high school, in school, any school, and college. Okay. It was 52% said favorable or somewhat unfavorable, very favorable or somewhat favorable, right? So very similar to the parents' numbers. Okay, so what we're seeing is young people, from their perspective, their teachers and their parents support socialism at roughly the same rates, which I think is a very interesting phenomenon, right? Unfavorability for socialism was actually lower. So it's less likely to have teachers who were openly unfavorable to socialism. Makes sense than the parents, right? Because they're more leftists on average in teaching positions than there are just parents in general. That was 26% unfavorability. So now scroll all the way over back down to the political stuff. Yep. Okay. Now, what we're seeing here is if you say your teachers and your professors liked socialism, of those people who voted for Harris, it was, what does that add up to there?
Like 61, it says.
61%.
62 over here, but there's point whatever. So yeah, 61 it says.
Okay, so 61%. Now add up the Trump number.
48, 49.
Okay, so now the reason that this is relevant, I think, is what this seems to indicate is that there are a lot of people who voted for Trump who also said that their teachers were socialists.
Sure.
And that seems to have had a stronger effect, or not as strong of an effect, your voting how you vote relative to your parents. So in other words, if your parents don't like socialism, you are more likely to vote for Trump. Then that relationship between your parents' views and your views is more important than your teacher's views and who you're voting for.
Right.
Okay. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So it just kind of confirms what we found in the first question, which said the number one reason why I went one way or the other was my parents or my grandparents. That was, if you add those two together, that's the number one response. So again, it breaks this you don't see a strong correlation here between teachers and their views and kids once they reach, voting age and their views.
Right.
You just don't see it. It's not that there's no impact. It's just not as strong of an impact as you would expect to see.
Interesting. That's very interesting. I that little crosstab though made me want to scroll back up to the next presidential election is 2028. Would you like to see a Democratic Socialist candidate win that? As we already said, 51% saying yes, 32% saying no. I gotta see who voted for Harris, who voted for Trump. So according to this, 78% of those that voted for Harris would love to see a Democratic Socialist win next time around. Not a surprise. This one should be a little surprising. 27% of those that voted for Donald Trump said that they would like to see a Democratic Socialist win next time around. That's a quarter.
Yes. And we asked we did this same thing in a previous poll in September. I believe it was September. And the percentage of Trump voters in that one was like 35% who said that they would. So it's actually, this one's better than the last one. So there is a sizable, this was one of the main takeaways from this poll and the previous poll. There is a sizable chunk of people who voted for Trump and who identify as Republican and who identify as conservative that actually want a socialist.
Mm-hmm.
And this is so hard for people to wrap their minds around. When you poll older people, that isn't what happens.
Right.
It's with younger people. There are people. So that what that tells you is people who are younger, who are voting for Trump or identifying as Republican, are doing it for reasons other than for economic reasons, like the economics of the economic ideology of socialism versus capitalism and all of that stuff.
Sure.
They're basing it on something else. And we don't know what that is, but it's clearly something else. Now, not across the board, because still most Trump voters don't like socialism, even according to this. But there is a sizable chunk of Trump voters and Republicans who say, yep, I want a socialist to be president.
Right.
And that is so disturbing.
Yeah, well, let's keep that in mind when we start talking about the housing stuff too. Let's race through these next couple.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. We're running out of time. So let's do so the next one we asked about church. And we asked about whether, well, actually, sorry, no, go up one more. We asked about media and basically people's perception of media. It was very similar, 53%. You can see the same kind of numbers pop up over and over and over again. 53% say, yes, the media I consume leans socialist. The next one was, if you attend church, how do they portray socialism? This was the lowest favorability of everything, but it also didn't have a high unfavorability. It was just a lot of people don't attend church and churches don't seem very active on this issue at all, which is a whole nother set of things that you could talk about that have to do with church and whether churches should be talking about these issues and everything else.
Sure.
But that was just interesting, I thought. So let's get to the housing questions so that we don't run out of time.
All right. So this one, has the cost of housing in America reached a crisis level? This might be the highest percentage of any poll or any question that we had in this entire poll. 74%, basically 3 in 4 said yes, that housing has become a crisis in America. That's stark right there. I'm like, we should just rest on that just for a beat, because this is again likely voters between the ages of 18 and 39, and 3/4 of them are saying, yes, it's a crisis.
And I'm willing to bet that it's very high for, so this is really interesting. Look at the ages.
Yep.
Notice that as the ages go up, you get into ages where you would like to be buying homes, right? The older you get, the more you want to buy a home, the more you think it's a crisis.
Yeah, an 18-year-old who's probably not even thinking about owning a home is like, I don't know, maybe no, I guess.
Same thing with 25 to 29, right? Because in our world today, people, when you're under 30, you're typically not buying a home. A lot of people are not. Once you hit 30, you're thinking about it now. Yeah. And it gets to 75 and then up to 81. Those are going to be your most disgruntled people.
Yes, that's
81%.
That's some shocking results right there.
Those are shocking.
And you'll know, I mean, we've actually been talking about this for a while, the idea of a nation of renters, in the future you'll own nothing, all of these sorts of concepts. We've been talking about this for a little while. And right now, you're starting to see attention being paid to this, where you've got certain proposals being thrown out there by the White House, the Trump administration. In my opinion, not the best proposals quite yet, but I think as these results kind of permeate the cultural zeitgeist, you're going to see a lot more momentum behind this issue and a lot more proposals from the left and the right to solve this perceived crisis of housing. Especially as elections, get nearer and everyone's jockeying to get as many of these 18 to 39-year-olds to vote for Team Red or Team Blue. So I think that this issue is going to be coming up a lot. And here's the evidence of it, basically.
Yep.
Zoran Mamdani, a Democratic Socialist, is currently the front runner. So this was obviously written before he won. He has now won. He is now the mayoral, whatever the term is, where you're not actually in power yet. Elect. There you go. Do you have a very favorable, somewhat favorable, whatever, opinion of Mamdani? So the majority, 52%, have a very or somewhat favorable impression of Mamdani. When it comes to negative, it's only 24%. So less than half of the percentage points that the pro side got. We don't need to do this. Let's just move on from that one. I think we've covered that topic enough. Mamdani's policy platforms include a proposal to create government-owned grocery stores to help reduce the rising cost of food. Would you support a law that would expand Mamdani's proposal for government-run grocery stores in every town in America? Well, 57% or 58, whatever, say, yeah, we support that.
Yeah, 58%. Notice that's higher. This is what I alluded to earlier. That's higher than the support favorability for Mamdani himself.
Yeah.
So they like his ideas more than they even like him. Now, the next question, go down to the next one. Another Mamdani policy question. Proposal to freeze rent in many of the city's apartments. That was a Mamdani campaign promise. And to build 200,000 new rent-regulated apartments. Would you support a proposal in Congress to make this nationwide, including the rent freeze? 62% support that. It's even higher. So now we're 10 percentage points higher than just favorability of Mamdani himself. And strongly oppose is only 12%.
Sure.
Now think about that. That is incredible. I mean, that's a remarkable. We're talking about a price control policy. This is a nationwide price control policy and a government housing plan. And only 12% of young people oppose that. Yes, I mean, very depressing. Now, this goes back to the housing thing. Okay, we're still on housing. This is super interesting. This is one of the smartest questions that I've ever come up with, I think. And I say that with as much humility as I can muster. Are you more likely to vote for a Democrat, Republican, or a candidate from another political party in the 2028 presidential election? This is a lead-up question to the next one. All right. So I just want to know, are you going to vote for a Democrat or a Republican? So then what I wanted to do was say, okay, I'm trying to figure out how important is housing to these people. So the next set of two questions are, we're going to ask the Democrats, the people say, I'm voting Democrat. We're going to ask them, okay, but would you be willing to vote for a Republican if they could fix the housing crisis? trying to see how important that is to people. And then we did the same thing to the people who said, I'm voting Republican. Okay, would you vote for a Democrat, though, if they could fix the housing crisis? And here's the results that we get from that.
Yeah. So would you be willing to vote for a Republican presidential candidate if you believed he or she offered the best plan to reduce the cost of housing? So this was only asked to Democrats, correct?
Yes, correct.
42% said yes. So theoretically, 2 in every 5 would swap their vote to a Republican if they thought that Republican had a better solution to solving the housing crisis. On the other side of things, would you be willing to vote for a Democrat presidential candidate if you believed he or she offered the best plan to reduce the cost of housing? Again, asked of the people that said they were going to vote for a Republican, 45% said that they would swap that vote. So 2 very sizable numbers willing to go across the aisle and lend support to a candidate that they might not otherwise support if they thought they had a better housing crisis solution.
Unbelievable. And this is the most, so we've been told, now whether this is true, I believe this is true. We've been told by someone who would know that this poll and the last poll have gotten the attention of the White House.
Yes.
And include at the highest levels. And now this question here, these questions here, you would think if you are in the White House, you would think this would be the thing that stands out more than anything else. If you can fix this problem, you can win over a lot of young people who seem like on the surface, you would never be able to win them over. And that goes for politicians on both sides. The young people are more, it's the most utilitarian type generation of any generation that America has had, I think, in a very long time. It isn't really about like ideology so much as it is, are you just going to do this thing that I think is the thing that we need to do? It isn't really tied to this grand overarching idea about like liberty or economics or philosophy or anything like that. It's, we have a housing crisis and we need to fix it. And yeah, I'd vote for the other side if they'd fix it. Like that's, if you ask older people that, they're not saying that. Mm-hmm. There's literally nothing that you could say. There's no way you could frame this question. You could frame this question any way you want. There's no way you could get my dad, who's in his 60s, now 70 years old. You could never get my 70-year-old dad to answer, yeah, I'm voting Democrat.
Right.
If they just did this thing. Nope, there's nothing. There's literally nothing. Not one single policy. Obviously, if the parties just switched everything they believed in, then that's different. But just one policy, there's no single policy that you could point to where he would say, yep, I'm switching. There's just no way. And I think that's true of most people that we know, who are above the age of, say, even 40. But in this group, no, it's way up for grabs. These people do not have strong ideological allegiances or strong party allegiances. What they want is just for things to be in their minds better. Now, that doesn't mean that they want the right things. I don't think these things are the right things.
Yeah, we just covered the government-owned grocery stores.
Right. Yeah, they love that idea. They think that's great. They think the rent freeze idea is a great idea. That's a horrible idea. If you want to limit the amount of new housing that's being built, that's what you would do. Freeze rent. So there's no incentive for people to build new housing. So it's not a good idea. But the point is they can be won over one way or the other. And so that is a really, really important point for people to keep in mind, not just now, but going forward. This is we're talking about 18 to 39-year-olds. In the next 10 to 20 years, this is going to be the group that matters when it comes to elections. They're going to decide. And what they're signaling to everybody is, we don't like you Republicans. We don't like you Democrats. We like the Democrats a little better than the Republicans, I guess, but we'll vote for anybody who just will fix our problems.
Right.
And that is AI. Or AI. Or AI. Anyone or anything, any machine that's willing to fix our problems will do it. We don't care. Again, remember what I said before about the strong man. That's what we're seeing in the data. We are we have a generation of people who are open to just getting things done no matter what. And that is both, in some ways, it's a good thing. They're not so ideologically entrenched and hopelessly biased and stuff like that. In another way, this is very dangerous,
Right.
because they don't share the views that older generations of conservatives have shared. And by the way, Donnie and I are in this group.
Oh yeah.
Just to be clear, we are between the ages of 18 to 39.
Yeah, I got called. I took the survey. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, no,
1,500 times.
Yeah, the housing one, all of the housing stuff. Like I said, I've been shouting this from the rooftops for years. Even some of our own colleagues will kind of dismiss this and write it off as just, these are just, they're eating too much avocado toast, lazy generations, all of those sorts of things. But these are the perceptions, clear as day, and these are the things that are going to move the needle come election time, whether you like it or not. So, Justin, there was one more question. Should we hit this one real quick before we sign off here, or what?
Yeah, we do it real quick.
Yeah. So this one is: do you think that your economic future and personal happiness level will be better or worse than that of your parents, or will it be about the same? So, better. 24% said better. 44% said worse. And 23% said about the same, but 44% said worse. So nearly half of those polled here think that they're going to be doing worse off in terms of personal happiness and their economic outcome.
And scroll to the right a little bit so we can look at the age differences here. And you do see a little bit of a gap here as well. Yeah. Older people within this group between 30 to 39, they're more disgruntled. They're more frustrated. They're not necessarily more socialistic, but they feel worse about how things are turning out.
That's right. Yeah. And once you lose like hope in the future, a generation loses hope, thinks that the future doesn't have, bright, shiny roads waiting for them, they're more likely to turn to that collectivist route. They're more likely to turn to that economic strongman, socialist leader, authoritarian types, even, to basically rechart that course moving forward. This might be actually, now that I reread these results, this might be the most chilling of the answers here, where you've got half of these people responding saying, I think it's going to be worse. I think it's going to be worse than my parents' generation.
And is it any wonder that the same percentage say just put AI in charge of all the policy making, and a little more than this are saying, put the Democratic Socialist as president. Let's just blow up the whole, existing economy. I mean, it shouldn't surprise anybody. We have to just listen to what people are saying where they're at.
Right.
And this is the biggest problem we have on the right is there's so many people on the right who just don't want to hear it. And instead they want to just dismiss people's opinions and feelings and what they're saying and say, you shouldn't feel that way. You shouldn't think that way. You don't know how good you have it. That does not work. Right. Okay. It does not work. It doesn't work to tell someone who feels something, stop feeling that. You have no reason to feel that way. That doesn't work. Okay. Every husband in America knows this. You can't just tell people, hey, you're feeling the wrong thing. Stop. That does not resonate with people. And that's what conservatives have been doing for basically 10 to 15 years with younger people, at least. They've been saying, yeah, I know you're complaining about everything, but you don't have no reason to think that way.
All right, so we're going to wrap this up, but I do also want to put this note out here because I know I can just anticipate the comments. None of this is an advocation of socialism. None of this should be an advocation of leftism, big government solutions, anything like that. Because I do think that if structured the proper way, free market solutions, unlocking the powers of a real, true capitalist system and free enterprise, all of those things can help all of these people reach levels of prosperity that far exceed their parents. It all just has to be messaged properly. But that all first takes the requirement of basically acknowledging these issues. We have to acknowledge this. These are the perceptions out there. Don't deny them, acknowledge them, and work towards solutions that are more aligned with, free market, free enterprise, that sort of thing.
That's right.
So just putting that out there before everyone starts accusing us of being, secretly socialist or something like that. But Justin, final words?
We have a lot of work to do.
Yes, I know. We do.
That's my final words.
This should be a wake-up call. If you're still sleeping, you still think that we're going to coast of electoral victories in the next several elections or whatever, wake up. We got a lot of work to do. All right. Thank you all for tuning into this episode. Join us weekly where we put out new content about socialism, about emerging issues, artificial intelligence, emerging technology, all of that good stuff. And like I said, put some comments in there. Let us know what your reactions to some of these results were. Let us know other topics that you're interested in, that you want us to cover, that sort of thing. But yeah, join us next time. Hit that like button, share this content, subscribe if you haven't already. Go to heartland.org for more, good stuff. And Justin, where can people find you?
You can go to justinhaskins.com or find me at Justin T. Haskins on all the big social media networks.
Beautiful. All right. See y'all next time.